The highest elevation point of every movie is the climax. A climax can be shown in the form of character change or a turning point within the story, whether it be through dialogue or acting. My favorite form of a cinematic climax is a fight scene. The fight scenes on the surface level can just be mindless action eye candy and visually dope choreographed movements. But when you look at a fight scene as visual storytelling, you get those hints of character change and see the turning points happen in real time with and without the context of the entire movie you're watching the fight scene take place in. In this video, I'm going to share with you my top 10 favorite fight scenes from my current favorite fight scene to my most favorite, and explain what makes those scenes a part of my top 10. Number 10, Frank Dukes vs. Chong-Li. This fight is amazing. I recently just watched Bloodsport for the first time not too long ago, around 2020, and I've been sleeping on Van Damme's movies. Man, I've missed out on it. The music within this fight scene really sells the scene well, especially when it cuts in and out from him being temporarily blind and training with his master. The reason why I like this fight scene so much is not so much of the choreograph. The fight choreograph can be, I don't want to say simple or very easy to do for martial artists of their caliber, but it's serviceable. I'm not here for the fight scene. I'm here for how much it makes me feel good and how motivating it is, because it's really the music by Paul Herzog that really sells the entire scene. Without the music in Bloodsport, the movie would not be as iconic as it is today. When the music suddenly slows down after Frank gets blinded by Chong-Li's dust pill dust, whatever you call it, and then he's like screaming and looking around like he's blinded, and he screams, and then we get that flashback to him training with his Shidoshi, and you can tell that he's learned how to fight blind, and then the music amps right back up all the way to where he's fighting blind, and especially when he does those cartwheel kicks and the music's da 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 da, it's just fucking amazing. The music helps elevate the hypeness around it, especially with all the people in the background just cheering on the two fighters. It is all these aspects within this fight that makes it my number 10 on this list. Number 9, Bruce Lee vs. Dan Inosanto, or Billy Lowe vs. Pascal. The original fight scene as it was filmed had Bruce Lee originally pointing out his weaknesses in his style, but I'm just talking about the theatrical release and not the footage that was originally filmed, just so everyone knows. This is my first ever favorite fight scene, and is the very first martial arts movie I was ever exposed to. If you want to know more about that story, check out the previous video. But I love this fight just because of how show-offish both are. Both Bruce and Dan in this scene know that they're hot shit, and they're gonna show off all their skills with the nunchucks and whatever weapons they have. It is not so much a measure of skill, but a measure of ego, I guess you could say. You have Dan showing off that he's really skilled with the nunchucks. When Bruce breaks it out, you know shit's getting real. In the sound effects we don't give enough credit to. The nunchuck noises is just so fascinating. It's almost like a deadly whistle. Like, what did they use in post-production to make those noises? And not to mention, Bruce Lee's yellow tracksuit is just iconic as ever. And it matches with his nunchucks. So, extra points for that. Gotta have your weapon match your outfit. Number 8, Creed vs. Conlan. This is the most emotional fight scene for me. Sure, the other Rocky movies had just as emotional fight scenes, but this one struck a chord with me a lot more. And I guess it's also because I saw it in the theaters, so I was really feeling that hype energy too. Throughout the entirety of Creed 1, you see Creed just going by the name Adonis Johnson, which is his actual last name. But he's really the son of, well, the illegitimate child of Apollo Creed. So when you see him try to make a name for himself, he eventually has to own up that he is the son of Apollo Creed, even if he is a product of adultery. And when you finally see him take on that Creed name and train alongside Rocky with all those callbacks from the previous movies, seeing him fight against Conlan is just empowering to no other level. During the fight, you see that he's screwing up a lot and getting hit because he's going up against the world champ at the time. But as the fight goes on, you see his training coming into play, and he's getting better. He's kicking ass. Sure, Pretty Ricky Conlan gets in some licks too, but Creed also replies with just as much aggressiveness as he does. And I love how this fight is shot and how it's choreographed, because Unlike the previous Rocky movies where it felt a little cartoonish at times, it at least keeps it in the realm of realism to some extent. Sure, they're still beating the shit out of each other's faces like the previous movies, but there's a lot more movement that seems like it would be allowed in an actual boxing match. I'm no expert, but just from watching how the fight scene looks, it feels like an actual fight. It doesn't feel like an exhibition match that you see that they're putting on a show. It feels like they're actually fighting in an actual match with stakes at hand. Sure, there's Creed 2 where he actually fights the son of the man who killed his father, but Creed versus Conlan, this fight just is a lot more emotional because he's not just trying to avenge his father in some sort of honorable way. He's trying to make a name for himself. And I think it means a lot more when he's fighting for himself than just trying to go after something that's just plain revenge. Which is why I would say it's the most emotional fight scene for me. Number 7. Agent Liu versus the twins. This is the most badass fight scene for me. Not my most favorite, but it's the one that makes me feel the most badass. Jet Li is the silent but deadly protagonist. He has very little to say, but when shit goes down, you know he's going to kick ass. So when it comes to this fight scene, he clearly knows he is fighting two enemies, but instead focuses on the most effective fighter first. And if you've seen this fight scene already, you already know that one twin is the DPS or damage dealer, and the other is the tank, or the one that takes the most damage, or is able to take the most damage. So when he fights the more skillful fighter at first, he's definitely outnumbered, especially fighting in a small office space like this. Not only that, he is getting wombo-comboed by the twins, and as the fight continues, he uses the environment to his advantage. The DPS twin is able to kick like crazy, so what does he do? He puts him in a much more tight space where he can do less kicks, and Jet Li's able to just knock him out that way. I should also mention that hip-hop would usually be a weird insert song for a fight scene, but it really works in this case. I can't imagine this fight scene having any other music aside from Mystical Fever. It just feels right, and I guess it's also that early 2000s kind of environment and movie. And what really makes this scene badass for me is in the way of how he executes the fighters. No, it's not just a simple knockout, he straight up murders them. The DPS twin, of course, he's beating the shit out of early, and then eventually he kicks him upside down and snaps his fucking neck. Like, it's so unexpected, but it's so badass. And then you have him fighting the tank twin, where he's got nothing at first going. Every punch he's trying to get, nothing's happening, and he's just getting tossed around and just hit. And so what does he do? Discombobulation. And he ends it in the most spectacular way possible. Number 6. Obi-Wan versus Anakin. This is my most favorite sword dueling fight scene of all time. Not in just the emotional context of that you're gonna see Anakin become Darth Vader or Obi-Wan become the Ben Kenobi, but it's just that these are two of the bestest friends in the galaxy, and now they're enemies. And there's just something kind of morbid but also cool of seeing two friends now become enemies, fighting to the death. And just seeing them swing their lightsabers around with each strike trying to be a killing blow, and that even though you know how this fight is going to end, you're just on the edge of your seat hoping the episode 4 stuff doesn't come to pass, even though you know in the back of your mind it's going to happen regardless. The fight starts out very simple, quick moving, sword dueling movements, then eventually goes on to hand-to-hand combat within that long table room. It goes from fighting on the ground to balancing on a pipe, then you have them jumping off the pipes and eventually fighting on a falling pillar that is going into a whole river of lava. And you think the fight stops there? No, they're still trying to slash away at each other and then getting on cables coming off of the pillar and swinging and still trying to fight each other. Like, you can't get more crazy than that. And then we get to the ending of the fight, of course. While tragic, shows how far blind rage can take you and how it can destroy you. Number 5. Ip Man vs General Miura. This fight scene has my most favorite camera work. While they could have just done a lot of wide shots where it's just Ip Man fighting General Miura in a wide shot going from point A to point B, they decided to show the movements of each fighter and the impact they made with each hit. Usually I'm not a fan of the quick cutting style, going from point A to point B with all these kind of movements. It makes it hard for the people or the audience to track what kind of movements are happening. I'm a fan of it here, because at least here it is done well, and along with the sound effects, it sells the hits. But the highlight of this scene is when he puts the general against the pillar and starts treating him like a wooden dummy. And then it flashbacks from him training with the actual wooden dummy to actually putting his training onto the general himself. Which is why I put Ip Man vs General Miura on my number 5. It's smack smack dab right in the middle of all these fight scenes, a balance of new school and old school. Number 4. Batman Warehouse Fight from BVS. Oh yeah, quick note. When I'm talking about the warehouse fight, I'm not talking about the ultimate cut fight, I'm talking about the theatrical fight. This fight scene is very well choreographed, not just in the context of a fight scene itself, but with the context of that this is Batman, and this is how he should be. Previous Batman movies have shown him just to be a competent fighter, not really showing off how crazy of a martial artist he is. I mean, this is the man who went around the world, learning every single martial arts he could, and eventually coming back to a city and making use of it. And this is the Batman that you really feel did go around the world and learn every single martial arts. And the way he handles crowds is just very effective. It feels like there is no wasted movement in this fight scene at all. Everything that Batman has to do must be quick and calculated, and so does the thugs. And speaking of effectiveness, the thugs here are not just your run-of-the-mill thugs, they actually take advantage of everything Batman has, from pulling his cape and attacking him in numbers instead of one by one. He feels like he came straight out of the Arkham games. He's using that grapple hook move where you pull the opponent towards you. He's throwing those proximity bombs that disables weapons. Using the environment in the crate. It's just like Arkham Batman come to life. Number 3, John Wick Chapter 3, The Knife Fight. This scene is in my top 3 and has my favorite use of weapons and location in a fight scene. And out of all places to fight, you fight in an antique shop. You have 3 or more guys trying to go after John Wick's bounty, and the funny part about this is when they realize they have weapons all around them and don't have to fight hand to hand. Of course, they start using the antique swords and knives and all that, and from there is where the carnage really takes off. You have John Wick throwing knives at opponents. You have him literally trying to palm strike a knife into a bald dude's head. You have that scene where a knife slowly enters someone's eye, and it just makes me cringe. Even as badass as it is, it still makes me cringe just a bit. And just seeing John Wick throw knives like he's shooting a gun is insane. Throwing 1 to 5, or I already lost count of how many knives there is, and that one dude just is downright insane. I should also give props to the camera work and choreography. It feels like you see some fights go on in such great fluidity that there's never enough cuts that goes into throwing you off or letting you know, oh, they hit that little part right there. Which is what I love about the John Wick movies. And the way this fight scene ends. Number 2, Ito vs. Arian. I love how brutal and unapologetic this fight scene is. It starts out very clean, just hit there, trading blows, trading punches, and then goes straight up into horror territory. You have Arian trying to rip out Ito's mouth as if he was King Kong trying to rip open a T-Rex's mouth. And then Ito weaponizes a wood piece with a nail going through it like a brass knuckle. And they even weaponize pins and all these workshop tools, and just like, geez, man, it brings all your fears of workshop tools going wrong into reality. And while the biggest highlight of this fight scene is the gore and how cringy and how painful it makes you feel, it is also kind of sickeningly satisfying. Sickeningly satisfying. Yeah, there we go. I said it right. It is sickeningly satisfying because of how terrible Arian's character is in the movie. And you get to see these two suffer. I mean, Ito eats a fucking razor blade. I don't think I can put into words to explain how crazy this fight is and why it's on my top 2. You just have to watch it to see it for yourself. And finally, number 1, Ong Bak 2, The Final Fight. The final fight of Ong Bak 2 is a long and very ambitious fight scene consisting of multiple martial arts styles and weapons. This is my most favorite fight scene of all time just because of these aspects. I would even argue this is peak Tony Jaa in all of his movies. The man is literally using multiple martial arts and highlighting them. You see Tony Jaa using Muay Thai, using swords, and using tiger martial arts, using a triple nunchuck. He's using Scorpion's flying spear. He's fighting on an elephant. All these styles just culminating in one whole fight scene, and especially with all these other fighters that are from all around the world. This fight scene is long, but you don't realize the length until you've watched it all the way till the end. And just when you think it's done, no. Tony Jaa's gonna get back up and kick more ass, regardless if he has a cut on his chest. He's gonna cover that wound up with some sand and fight more on. And the fight only ends when the supernatural aspect comes in, and that's where he truly gets defeated. Everything I love about fight scenes creatively and visually is all put into this scene. From the camera work to the choreography, I can't even imagine how many days it must have taken to film this entire fight scene. Probably months and months of rehearsing and then eventually filming it. Not to mention that nasty fall Tony Jaa took onto that giant rock. This is my top one and most favorite fight scene of all time, just because of how creative, how inclusive, and how well executed this entire scene was handled. I'm really at a loss for words. You just have to see it to believe it. I'm just gonna leave it at that. And that was my top 10 favorite fight scenes, from my current favorite fight scene to my most favorite. If you liked the video, be sure to like, subscribe, or hit the bell notification so you never miss a video. And if you want to see more content like this, comment down below and let me know. Much love to those who subscribed and watched my previous video. I did not expect that video to blow up. It was just a kind of off the chain and just off my mind video that I just put together really quick in like a day or two. Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. Other than that, I will catch you in the next video.